So I'm inviting each and every one of you to come along in this journey down memory lane as we reveal the details of Darius Crook's first big scam, also known as Fresh Go. So let's get into it. Okay, so we have here a post from someone in It's Time to Deplatform Darius Crooks Williams Facebook group. Feel free to join. There's a public page if you're interested. There's plenty of receipts and all sort of things over there. And this post says, Fresh Go receipts, fake grocery delivery service owned by Darius Williams in Chicago and closed in 2012 when he ran off with everybody's money, including mine. So what we're going to do is we're going to break down some of these receipts, and I'm going to give you a timeline as we go through it, starting with Sunny Anderson and her connection to Darius, but also the whole Fresh Go scam. So this is a summary, and this was actually in the Black Enterprise article that was done, the second article that Black Enterprise did on Darius Williams, or also known as Darius Cooks. And this kind of breaks down and gives a summary of the Fresh Go situation, and I'll fill in the gaps as needed. But let me read this to try to get us on the same page with this situation. So it says, Sunny Anderson and Williams Fresh Go controversy. Anderson claims that Williams had a Fresh Go business where it promised to deliver fresh vegetables on the doorsteps of customers, but people bombarded her with angry messages claiming they were ripped off and overcharged on their credit cards. They hit up Anderson because she had him on her show 2 years ago. And remember, I mentioned that in a video or so ago. I can't remember. It's got so many of these videos now. But Sunny Anderson had Darius on her Food Network show many years ago, and he was on there like twice. This was over a decade ago. This was when it was actually his first big break. And what he did with his first big break was presented and advertised a scam. Craziness. And then he wonders why his brain won't grow and he got issues. But anyway, let's continue. It says, Anderson said she gave Williams the benefit of the doubt, but she says he refused to answer her inquiries. Yeah, she's definitely spoken on that. Sunny is then quoted as saying, the bottom line is, before me, no one on TV knew of him, and he didn't have a platform to build what he built. Just imagine if you could do it the right way with the talent and ability to galvanize people. Why wouldn't you want to do it the right way, she asked. And that's a question that many people have asked. Me being one of the people who were there in the inception of what we're seeing today, I have questioned that as well, because I saw the potential, and I was around when he was on the Sunny Anderson show and saw his star, starting to rise and all of that. And the truth is, had he done it right, he could have been successful in a legitimate way, not, by scamming people. And I think it's a psychological thing. I just truly do. Some people allow their demons to take over their talents, and this is a prime example of that. This is why he's facing so much karma, because he basically made a deal with the devil to be a millionaire by the age of 30. I mean, allegedly. I'm assuming based on what we're looking at. Looks like he made a deal with the devil. However, karma is now knocking at his door, and that's what happens. But let's see what else Sunny has to say. So Sunny says she took part in a Zoom meeting organized by the Kitchenista with other Black women chefs, and she was floored by what she heard. She's quoted as saying, a lot of Black women who are eager to get their careers started are being taken advantage of. One person on the call had direct dealings with him, and we were all just crying, she shared. And this here is yet another example of things I've heard, stories I've heard one-on-one personally from people who've reached out, but also other stories that people have shared, third-party stories, etc. And what Sunny is sharing here about having that call with other female chefs, and one of them having an encounter with Darius that was obviously so traumatizing that she was crying. Not the first time I've heard it. There are many, many stories of vicious things that he's done to people and tried to ruin them, like stealing intellectual property, taking advantage of them because they were lesser known or naive in some way. He's truly just being a predator. And then when he's done with these people and he's used them up, he doesn't just leave, he tries to destroy them. And so here's just yet another example of that. So let's see what else. It goes on to say, last year, Anderson said when she posted that people should be aware when dealing with Williams because of his scams, she said he and his attorney sent a cease and desist letter that she countered with a letter from her attorney stating that since the attorney general found that he was engaged in illegal credit repair activities, Anderson had the right to call him a scammer on her platform to describe him because he was a scammer. That's why we can do it so freely, because he is a known scammer. The government, the state of Georgia, said he was a scammer, made him pay $145,000 in restitution for the people he scammed. And on top of that, they took away all of his business licenses, including Greens and Gravy and Soul Crab Atlanta. And so she's right. He's a scammer. He's a known scammer. Now, doesn't matter what he tells you about voluntarily closing the restaurants for mental health and all of the other narrative spins that he does. The truth is, it's in the documents. I'm going to read those documents one day because I keep forgetting. But it's actually in the final court documents stating that he had to give up all of his Georgia business licenses, which would include the restaurants. So anyway, it says, in retaliation, Williams sold his cookbooks with the discount codes Sunny and Bad Wig, she said. So this is another, tactic he uses, bullying, when someone speaks out. And you have Sunny Anderson, who has, a large following. She's a public figure. And because he couldn't scare her away from talking about him by taking the legal route, he then went for the petty bullying route and harassment. And the D-Wives, the D-Hive, they buy into it because they're, not smart. They're not. So, they go along, and then he gets more money. He's being called out for being a scammer. And in retaliation, his clapback is to then take advantage of his D-Wives by saying, see, I'm rich. I can make y'all buy more stuff from me. Like, they talking about me. Y'all need to buy more stuff from me. What? It's hilarious. It's really a cult over there. It's funny. It's funny because it's sad. But it goes on to say that even though Anderson says people approached her about his Fresh Go business, William proclaims that he has no ties to Fresh Go, doesn't know what it is, and never had any affiliations with it. Remember this part, people. I'll read it again. Make a mental note of this because we're going somewhere with this part. It says, even though Anderson said people approached her about his Fresh Go business, Williams, that's Darius Cooks Williams, a.k.a. Darius Crooks, a.k.a. Darius Marquise Williams, another Ellie's. We'll talk about that at some point. But anyway, it says Williams proclaims, or should I say Darius Cooks Williams proclaims that he has no ties to Fresh Go, doesn't know what it is, and never had any affiliation with it. Remember that. We're going somewhere. Okay, so the article then continues with an actual quote from Darius. So for those of you who don't have the backstory, because this is just a section of an entire article that I went over a long time ago in a different video. But this particular article was the second article that Black Enterprise did as a response to the first article they did where they talked about all of the allegations around Darius Crooks and how he was a scammer, et cetera, et cetera. So Darius then had one of his D-Hivers, D-Wives, put her neck on the line, and she reached out to people she knew, the higher-ups at Black Enterprise, and demanded that they retracted the story, the original article. They were saying, we're not going to retract it, but we will give him an opportunity to interview and address the allegations. And so that's what happened. So Darius Cooks, Williams, whatever you want to call him, he, not having a publicist, thinking he can do everything on his own, being full of himself, arrogant, used to being able to spin the narrative and get away with, all kind of sins, thought that he could fool, I don't know why, but thought he could fool a national media outlet, that being Black Enterprise. And so he just made up shit. He just made up shit. But what he didn't know was that the reporter of this particular story was also the editor, the digital editor-in-chief, if I'm not mistaken. Her name is Kia Morgan Smith. And so what he didn't know about the rules of engagement when it comes to reporting is that when he responds, then she reached out to us for our response to his response. And what we then responded with the actual receipts. And on